I'm very privileged to be joined here by 4 esteemed colleagues from across local schools and colleges in Hampshire. So I will introduce each of them, and then they have the opportunity to tell us a bit about their own experiences in their educational settings, how they may be or be working towards becoming a school or college of sanctuary, what that means to them, and then we'll come back round to some questions that we've already prepared, but we also maybe have some time to go out to the in-person audience as well. So first off, we have Louise Buxton, our head teacher at St Peter's Catholic Primary School, just down the road from us, I believe. So welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and what you get involved with at St Peter's?
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, I've been a head teacher for 16 years, and I've done the diocesan inspections that some of you will be particularly familiar with for about the last 20 years. And I've come across various awards that are given out, and none of them quite floated my boat. And a teacher went to a church meeting and connected with cities of sanctuary and schools of sanctuary, and she came back absolutely enthused. And she said, "I finally found the award that I think you'll want to work on." And also, I'm not an awards person for awards person's sake. And as soon as she started describing what the vision, what the aim, what the mission of it was, I thought, actually, this is us, but it can enhance, it can enrich what we currently do at St Peter's. And it's just been a wonderful award to work on because it gives you scaffolding, it gives you challenge, it's making you make things more explicit, but it's actually, you're already on that vehicle and you're already doing a lot of the work. And it's been really worthwhile. We've been working towards the award for about a year and a half, really able to concentrate on it post Ofsted. And I've got a governor that is very keen on the award as well, so she's been driving it. It's even been one of my performance management targets. So it's sat very much at the centre of our school improvement plan. For me, we only actually had 4 Ukrainian families join us. During that time, we took the opportunity to offer a teaching job to somebody that had come in, and a teaching assistant job, I should say, and a lunchtime job to a teacher, just so she could start experience in our schools, and she went off to actually teach at other schools. But Schools of Sanctuary to me is about belonging, and there's a lot of disenfranchisement from society. There's not buy-in from some of our families, and we also have a lot of families that are coming from Nigeria and Ghana to support and prop up the care system that we have and the NHS over here. We've got a lot of families coming from Hong Kong Chinese, and we know they're not refugees as such, but they're here because life's tough at home. So how do we welcome them? And that's what Schools of Sanctuary's done. It's made us really think about the welcome we give. It's about listening to them as well. So only last week I had a Ghanaian mum that's really struggling in settling, but I wanted her to feed back as brutally as she could to us about the welcome that she got. What more can we do? Be it uniform packs, be it we tied up with MTAS. We're seeing Sarah Cole later. So we've had coffee mornings, and we suddenly realised that we talk about inset days. They haven't got a clue what inset days are, and it's made us really think about the language we're using and the explanations that we're giving. For the children, it's about the welcome. The school council have looked at providing a survey for each new child that comes in, and not about their attainment, but about what sport do they like, what food do they like, what festivals do they celebrate. We're about 45% baptised Catholic. We have a lot of Hindu families, Buddhist families, children that we support through Ramadan. We have 28 different languages spoken at our school. I always thought Winchester, white middle class, there is that. But there's also, we're on the edge of a social housing state, and it's about the welcome that we give to those parents that may have a slight school phobia for whatever reason. So it's about us being a community. It's about us tying with our parish, very active parish. They do Family Fridays. So we target certain families that we think would benefit from, it's almost like a youth group. They cook a hot meal for the mum or the dad, and the children play and do arts and crafts. So there's that wider aspect as well for those children. And our mission ambassadors, meanwhile, which are children in the school, do a welcome tour for the children that come in and find out their interests and point out all the important things like where the football pitch is. Forget about the curriculum. Mind you, the curriculum we've been adapting as well, heavily, to make sure that children see themselves in the school around them and see themselves in the books, in the library, and actually in the taught curriculum, and making that explicit teaching within our RSHE, our RE, and our history, our literacy, about what it is to be a refugee, the journey, and about settling in a country.
Thank you, and it's just fantastic to hear the news of what's happening just down the road. I know that you're, I think, our first Winchester local school who are taking on the Schools of Sanctuary agenda, so thank you for that too.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Eileen Rawlins, who is the EAL coordinator at Cove School.
Thank you. So Cove is a secondary school in Farnborough. We have about 1,000 pupils. About 160 have English as an additional language. We currently have 13 refugees from Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, Myanmar, and also from Ukraine. So their needs vary very widely, from the Afghan children who come with perhaps no first language literacy and no English, to Ukrainian children who have very advanced education that they scaffold their English onto. They mostly live in a nearby home office accommodation and refugee hotel. So it's a question of having communication with the hotel, visiting and setting things up before they actually start with us. We also have Ukrainian students in host accommodation with families, and we also have a foster carer who's one of our governors who has also looked after Afghan students who are under the care of a London borough who find themselves with us. So I think that the main thing, although their needs are very different, is that they've all experienced trauma of some kind, particularly our students from Afghanistan who've come across on a small boat as unaccompanied minors, but also the Ukrainian students who've suffered from war and relocation to the UK, and perhaps also separation from family. So Ukrainian students have left behind fathers and grandparents, and Afghan students have left their whole family behind. So we try to provide a kind and safe and caring environment. So we're looking at it holistically, really, and also trying to be one step ahead in the things we do and anticipating issues that might come up. So our welcome is around communication. It's around advising the tutor group a little bit about the student, thinking about who their buddies might be, and in some cases having up to 3 buddies to look after them, because sometimes it's a big responsibility to be a buddy. So we have a number of those. We also provide practical support in how to apply for free school meals, transport, perhaps providing a bus pass until transport is agreed by Hampshire. Also, we look at the language and how we can assess that. We also involve MTAS as bilingual support for several weeks. We create a one-page profile to share with all staff, and MTAS will also do a profiling for us, which is really helpful. And then we also try to celebrate their culture and for them to be proud of the country that they've come from. We encourage the heritage GCSE exams in their own language. We have a cultural diversity day, which is at the heart of our Cove Festival week at the end of term, where the students run it for the students, so they can wear their own national dress. There is food created, competitions, dancing, singing, everything to do with different cultures. That's not specific for refugees. It's for all of our EAL students. And I think just the other key thing for us is to try to be one step ahead in things that are going to happen that might affect our children. So, for example, how we deal with Armistice Day for our Ukrainian students, looking at the PowerPoint, the assembly, what we're going to do with them, and giving them the opportunity to duck out of that sort of event, which they sometimes do. And also thinking if we're going to be reading with a student, it might trigger a talk about the experience they've had, and things like that. And also looking ahead to how we can reward and praise them. It's not just academic excellence, but looking at their care and character and how they can be rewarded for that. So that's us, really, at Cove.
Thank you, and it's so warming to hear about the welcoming, thoughtful and proactive approach that you're taking there, and how involved your students are in that as well, and it's not just coming from the staff, so that's lovely to hear. Next up, we have Emma, who is a learning support lead for EAL at Crestwood Community School.
So I'm the EAL lead for Crestwood Community School. We're a secondary school in Eastleigh, split across 2 campuses. So I'm responsible for all the students who are new into the country. A lot of the new students we've had are refugees. We've had refugees from Afghanistan and Ukraine, a significant number from Hong Kong who come with other needs as well. Generally, a lot of our EAL students are withdrawn from learning an additional language, so they work with me specifically on English and math skills. So I work with them through their schooling. I look at their existing skills. I do a welcome on their first day. They meet with me. I do an assessment on their language skills to see where we are at. If they're able to go and learn another language, that's great. If not, then they can become part of my timetable, and we work on English and maths and being able to access the curriculum. I use a lot of the skills that MTAS have shared with me regarding using Google Translate, say hi to help build communication skills. I build a bank of phrases and cards, so welcome cards. The students from Afghanistan spoke no English at all when they arrived, so we went through, made some pictures of words, things like, can I go to the toilet? You assume that every child can say, can I go to the toilet? They arrived from Afghanistan, they had very little schooling. The girl had never been to school, so she'd not been to school, made a bank of cards that she could just pop on the table, and our support assistants then work with her to be able to her to access going to the toilet. I support the children with their struggles in lessons, so we have support assistants who help them, but I'm also kind of their link with the school and the teachers. They have an iPad for translation, which then they can use with Say Hi or typing in Google Translate. I go and check in the lessons to see how they're accessing the lessons, if there are any struggles. I'm also kind of the link with the school, with the teachers, so I adapt any presentations or translate into the students' own language, them to be accessing the work. I do a lot of problem solving, so those students will come to me to say they've had an issue. I then liaise with pastoral for them to be able to explain what has gone wrong. All of our students tend to have pupil passports, which give guidance to the teachers, where the children need to sit, who they could sit with, what their level of English is as well. And then they have a provision plan, which also then shows the work and the guidance that I'm providing with them. I think the biggest part of what I do is providing the care and support to the students. I'm like the wraparound for the school, so I'm the person who liaises with the parents. We've done some draw and talk and some ELSA therapies with some of our more complex EAL students who've suffered trauma. I work with the ELSA, we do it on a translation basis to try to unpick some of the issues. All of the emails that are sent to parents come via me, and I send them out in the language for the parent to be able to access what they're saying. I attend the meetings with the parents and use translation as well. Heavily involved with MTAS. MTAS are my go-to, providing me with translators for all of our children who are even not necessarily refugees, but have significant learning needs and SEMH needs in their own language. I have them in for the translation. And I think the biggest thing is the wraparound care that I provide to the family. I'm the contact for the family. So I've been to the basics banks to collect food for Afghan parents who have no money. They've got half term coming up. They've come into school to meet me. I've been out in the holidays with my colleagues to deliver food to the parents. We provide uniform to the children. If they need shoes, we provide shoes, we provide PE kit. And I think I'm the big link between school and home. And it's that whole big piece really with care. I think the EAL students and refugees come now with more significant challenges, significant amount of trauma, and it's been able to unpick and identify some of the behaviours that I see are linked to their significant trauma, and it's about how we can best manage those in school.
Yeah, you know, it's really great to hear about those links with the families and how important that is, and the wealth of practical tips that you've just given there. I think you almost could write a talk yourself. So that's really helpful, and I know that's something that colleagues were very much hoping to get from today, so thank you for sharing that. And last but by no means least, we come to Jack from QMC, and you're going to talk to us about being College of Sanctuary.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm an English teacher at Queen Mary's College. I'm also the Ukraine support coordinator, along with my colleague Charlotte, who is here today. Now, when I started teaching, this was September 2020, which we can all agree is a very fun year to learn how to become a teacher. And I started as a GCSE English resit teacher. Those were most of my classes. So we had a lot of work with EAL students, and we were lucky that we had many colleagues who were experienced in providing EAL support. We have students coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Hong Kong, Thailand. So the provision was already there. It was in place. And I'm lucky that I teach at a college that has a very strong focus on equality, diversity, and inclusivity. It's a big part of our culture. It's one we're becoming locally known for. But we realized that we didn't have specific provision for refugee learners. We have a language hub. We have multilingual support here. But we didn't have anything specifically for those who fled to England. Like, we have Hong Kong students, but more often than not, they went to international schools. They came with, they didn't necessarily flee here. So we thought that was a gap we needed to fill, and we decided to start with our Ukrainian contingent. We have about 13 students of Ukrainian origin, and quite a few more who have Russian as a main language. So we have students from Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and that's like their common language. We wanted to start with there because it's the largest contingent, and we wanted to walk before we could run, basically. So we've been running this for about the past year or so. In that time, what we do is we have an extracurricular support group that is on a timetable every Wednesday. The Ukrainian students were all invited to it. Not all of them have to attend, but that way they know it's there. They've got a single safe space that they can go to. In fact, when they first came here, the number one question I would get from students in my A-level and GC classes was, where is the Ukrainian group? When is the Ukrainian group? Are there Ukrainians here? I would like to meet them. Where are the Ukrainian students? And it would go on and on like this until eventually we're like, no, we're going to be in this room, this time. Just come along, be ready to talk with others. They can talk to themselves in Ukrainian, but they have to talk to us in English. It's a place where they're encouraged to ask questions and they're meant to seek support, and we've had to provide a lot of support. Sometimes this is on academic matters because, well, a lot of our students are hoping to go to university, to apprenticeships, or to employment. And it's tough enough if you're a British national. What if you are a Ukrainian national, if you're fleeing? Particularly for some of our male students, because they're either 18 or just about to turn 18. If they go back home, they are going to be drafted. And there's an element of almost cultural shame around that, like they feel like they're dodging the draft. But their priority has to be keeping safe above all else. We've talked to them about visa and passport issues. We found, much to our dismay, actually renewing your passport at the Ukraine embassy is surprisingly hard because there are special slots they put up online. Someone has managed to book those and charges people to get them renewed. You know how like teenagers will buy up a pair of Air Jordans and sell them up for like 4 times the price? Like that, but for passports. Like, it blows my mind every time I think about that. So it's making sure that's all in place. So we have students who can go on field trips. They can go to do the challenges abroad, where they work in other countries, do activities there, get some kind of larger cultural awareness. We talk about exam clashes because a few of our students are still studying a Ukrainian curriculum as well. So they have their lessons during the day, they come home, they log on, they do Ukrainian lessons. And some of them are doing lessons on the Ukrainian specification, meaning they have to get up about 5 a.m. in the morning, get the train down to London, get to South Bank, register, and do a battery of exams. And that's a problem when it clashes with their GCSE English resit or their GCSE Maths. So we talk about that. We help prepare them for IELTS, because many of them want to go to university. We've managed to get access to free English tests on Duolingo, which is accepted by most universities. It's accepted as proof of qualification for that. Like with St. Peter's Catholic Primary School, we have a culture day here at college, because one of the things we were sort of keen on, it was making sure their culture didn't get watered down. Like, they're not just traumatized refugees, no, they're just parts of the student body. And a culture day has really helped with that. So now it doesn't matter if they're now part of a larger group. So we've got Ukrainian students in their Vyshyvanka, we've got Indian students in their saris, we've got Canadians in their double denim, which I assume is the national costume of Canada. And they bring in food, they bring in their music, they talk about their culture, they talk about what they are proudest of, and it really does help with integration, like they're part of a larger student body. With regarding things of an academic nature, it sort of ties into, we are working toward becoming a college of sanctuary. We've had help from our colleagues at Basingstoke College of Technology with that, because the application process is very long and very complicated. One of the things we've been doing in the English department, we teach unseen prose for A-level literature, and we have extracts for GCSE English. We've been making an effort to include more text by refugee or diasporic writers. So we have The Lonely Londoners, Exit West, Americana. I'm angling to get The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, because that is another story about about refugees from Eastern Europe fleeing a larger imperialist war. It's easy to do it's straight enough to do in English, but we've been conscious about it with GCSE English as well. One of the texts we do is an extract from Malala's autobiography. And we do have to check in, but we found a lot of our students can relate to that. In an interview we've done with our students, one of them talked about how real it felt. Like Malala talks about her home in Pakistan, but her house in Birmingham. And she notes that a teacher was checking on it, which she really, really appreciated. So we are on our way, and knock on wood, it will all work out. Now, this is not a lone endeavour. Now, this is something that Charlotte and I have been doing on our own time, basically in our lunch periods, basically. But it's inspired partly by this conference as well. Charlotte came here, and we decided we've got to do something about this. This is something that we can make individual to us. And it's not just been us. We've had the support of our Easy and I team, some of whom and they're here tonight. They've been endlessly enthusiastic. They've been very supportive of us. It's been some of our old colleagues who retired but came back to help them with their English language fluency. It's our students who have volunteered their time to help with conversational English. It's other schools and colleges that have allowed us to pull together resources and to establish something close to best practice. We tell our refugee students they are not alone, and that always surprises them. Like when we offered support, more than once we've had students go, can we compensate you for this? Can we pay you for this? And obviously we can't say that. I can't say that because we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. Like we have to tell them we are not alone in this. And doing this it makes me feel connected to the larger community, and it will help them feel connected to the larger community as well. Like a sense of solidarity, the sense of mutual support, it's been life-changing for us and for them. It's knowing they have a place they can go to, knowing they have teachers they can talk to. It really proves this idea that no man is an island, which I have to quote because I'm an English teacher and I've got to name drop that somewhere.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Jack. And it's just so heartening to hear. I think there's some common themes, particularly around, often this work is driven by champions within the schools, and without those champions, it's very hard to get it integrated. And once you've got those champions, whether it's head teachers, governors, EAL teachers, those are the ones who drive it, and then you've got to get the rest on board. And it sounds like you're really building a culture of community and that sense of belonging that we heard about in our previous session with our poet on our online assembly. So I think all of you either are or are considering and working towards, there's a national organisation called Cities of Sanctuary, and there are different streams or strands of activity where you can get an award. And I know, Louise, you were talking a bit about this at the very beginning. Why do you think schools, colleges and universities might consider becoming places of sanctuary, and maybe going that step further and taking up that award? I don't know, Louise, whether it might be worth coming to you first, because you mentioned about going through that process.
I think everything comes back to ethos of a school and the vision, the mission, whatever term you want to use. And if you've got that culture of inclusion and recognising diversity, and I'm talking about be it social class, be it race, be it SEN. A lot of our schools are seeing more and more SEN and very complex SEN within our schools. If we've got the best culture that we can for that child, they can be the best that they can be. But it's not just the child, is it? It's the family. You alluded to that, didn't you? And it's about getting them on board. The days of children just being dropped off at the school gate have gone. Parents come in. And you want that parent coming in to be welcomed, to feel they belong, they've bought in, because I do think a lot of our problems in our society is when people don't feel they belong. So it's wider than just the refugees, but it's also about ensuring that your own families recognise that actually when there's many different colours of faces on that playground, that everyone's got a right to be a part of the St. Peter's family or the Cove family. So you're doing a lot more than just educating children in this. You're educating actual communities, and you're learning from one another how best to do that and to look at best practice.
I think just on a larger, political, larger level, I think it's because this is a time where, when in doubt, where for as long as I can remember, as long as I remember reading the news, there's always been hostility towards immigrants and refugees, and this has got to be just a natural counterbalance to that. As you were saying, Louise, schools are a safe place. This is where you're part of a larger community, And well, and I'm really glad you brought up like SEM, because one of the things I noticed when talking to some of my students, they mention, oh, we want to join in, but we don't know how. And I'm like, that sounds so much like so many kids with autism or anxiety who I've worked with, who have no idea where to start. And well, when I started in SEND, because that's how I got into teaching, the idea was it wasn't about giving them one advantage over the other, it was leveling the playing field. And well, why wouldn't you want to level the playing field?
I think some of those points is about making sure that the community is inclusive, the curriculum is inclusive, and by doing so, you're recognising those individual differences, but actually you might be supporting other young people with other needs at the same time. Is there anything else you'd like to add to it, Emma?
No, I just think working with MTAS as a school, we're heavily involved with MTAS, and the support that they give is fantastic. And they often support me with the translation with the parents, which is a really big, important thing. And those parents feel part of the school because they have access to somebody who can translate for them. And those parents don't always necessarily pick up English very quickly. Even though they may have been here a few years, they still are unable to communicate, but they come in and I find ways if they need, we use Google Translate to have a conversation. So even myself, I'm able to do that. And I think those parents really feel part of the school and they know they have a voice. I guess I'm their voice for them.
And I think too, looking at the audit, we're at the very beginning of the School of Sanctuary process. The audit dovetails quite well with the MTAS EAL Excellence Award, which I think a lot of Hampshire schools, we're one of them, but a lot of schools are working through that. So when they compare that to the audit for School of Sanctuary, there's quite a lot of overlap. So I don't think there's quite so much work to do there as people might think when they first set out.
Almost two awards for one there.
Exactly, yeah. Yes.
I'm going to jump to my last question, actually, because I think this is something that comes up often, and where we said about champions. There's so many competing priorities and targets that we know schools, colleges, educational institutions have to be dealing with and have to commit to. How can they bring sanctuary in alongside those other competing priorities?
It's tricky for me to say because what Shah and I have done has basically been for free in our own lunchtimes, there's some sort of degree of funding, but mostly it's just been what we can arrange. So it has meant calling in favours. It has meant bringing staff back who have volunteered their time to help out some of the students. I think this is actually how we pitched it, because with every school, every college, you've got to deal with the issue of funding, like where it all comes from. And I think this was our pitch, where we effectively said, this is what we can do without having to make cuts in the budgets. You don't have to hire, you don't have to outsource this to anyone else. We can do this, just the two of us. But we deliberately chose, we wanted to start with a general refugee support, but we deliberately chose the Ukrainian group, A, because they're large contingent, and B, because it meant it was a little bit more manageable that way. So we wanted to, like I said, we wanted to walk before we tried to run.
I think too, it's involving as many staff as possible. So having SLT, a head teacher on board, is wonderful. We have that. We have a governor who came in and spoke to us on an inset day to tell us about Amir's journey, which was his journey from Afghanistan. And we've also got the English department. 3 years ago, they rewrote one of their Year 8 termly schemes of work, which is now called Marginalised Voices, which is a wonderful scheme of work that our Year 8s do. And we've run it for 3 years, so now the 10, 9s and 8s have all done that. And they really engage with it. It's an oracy project around poetry and how to give a speech. And it goes down really well. So we look at Brian Bilston's poetry. We look at how to actually stand and speak to peers. And that goes down really well. They really engage with the refugee vocabulary and the refugee situation extremely well.
Somebody mentioned about the dovetailing, and that is what's happening, and there's many birds with one stone. We've got Kirsty Ann here, and we're involved in another project, and it is about belonging, isn't it? The project that we've been working on, and it's about people feeling they belong and that that they're part of your school, and how best we do that, be it through a behaviour policy, or those conversations with parents that can be hard to reach. So it's actually your bread and butter. Yeah. In many ways, and if you get this right, and you've got that concept and that culture and that ethos, you get many other things right. And it's just been a vehicle of just for us about honing what we're doing. And I'm looking towards Leslie up there as well. She's been very involved with us from the Southampton and Winchester Visitors Group, and it's allowed us opportunities to bring them in, to keep enriching and enhancing those conversations that we've got to be having.
It's all right. We've got plenty to talk through anyway. And actually, you started to touch on partnerships, the importance of partnership and partnership working. And actually, later on today, with the people who've joined us in person, we've got a workshop around partnership working. And it'd be really interesting to know how you've managed to form some of those partners and how you found them fruitful, what some of the challenges and pitfalls that you may have overcome. Because I think in this particular agenda, it's vital that we do work in partnership and that we pull on each other's resources, because there are minimal resources for this. So who would like to sort of kick us off around the area of partnerships?
We have a few partnerships in the wider community, just as far as even things like the local football club creating hampers for our needy children. So that's not just refugee children, but working with them, and they have age-appropriate toys and gifts in there for the children, which is just lovely. It's promoting our links with the local church, who are often very heavily involved with the Ukrainian students. And also, there's a lot of refugee support out there that we're not always aware of. So it's making those links. We're fortunate in a way of having a refugee hotel, home office accommodation. So lots of people are involved from the community in that, in helping adults and children there. So it's just knowing what sort of help there is, bringing people together. And a school is an ideal place, actually, to have meetings of anyone who is involved in supporting refugees in the community.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Leslie with the Southampton Winchester Visitors Group, and they were on the audit form that I had. And as I was ploughing through that audit form, I said, right, I'm going to get in contact. Found out she happened to be a parishioner. And again, the lead up, this is my first refugee week as we've entered that school as a sanctuary domain. And the resources that we got from them have been really very easy to use, because we can't just keep adding pancakes onto the curriculum, but they've been with simple, I think it was called Simple Acts, and it was just a simple act each week, maybe listening to a song from a refugee, Freddie Mercury, or, for somebody that's, can't remember because I'm not very trendy, but some people I've never heard of, but also just an act of kindness, and so we've been really enriched by the suggestions that we've had from them, for example.
Fantastic.
I think I was introduced to Wayne, who's at Winchester University, and that's how I've become more aware of the refugee work, because I was a bit isolated, a bit on my own, and one of the girls I work with is at Winchester Uni, said, get in touch with Wayne. So I've been in touch with Wayne, and I think that's how I found out more about the Refugee Week and all the things that go on. So I'm quite new to learning through Wayne, really. He's put me in touch with some other people, which is great, because I've really struggled with some of the we've struggled with the behaviour of the Ukrainian students. Refuses to kind of engage and talk about where he is from, but we've had significant challenging behaviour, so it's trying to find out who else can support with the resources with that as well.
I think that speaks to that piece of, particularly before you get to that point where it's really embedded across the school, it is those champions, and often it can be quite isolating. Yes. When you were saying about you and Charlotte, you were trying to drive something, and now it does sound like it's much more embedded across the college, yes. But finding those friends in other institutions, really.
Yes. Well, it started here, that's the thing, because Charlotte went to the conference last year, and this is how we've been able to establish our own partnerships. So we're able to meet with, set relationships with Tamara and Holly from Basingstoke College of Technology, who really blazed a trail in that regard. We managed to get the free test from Duolingo. We have links with FA Hampshire. Like we had a football team from Queen Mary's College, another football team from BCOT playing like a refugee team, playing like a little friendly, and I can't remember who won. I think we won, but I'm sure Tamara will contradict me on this. I genuinely can't remember. So, you're so modest. But it does sort of help that larger spirit of community, because we realised because we definitely have more refugee students than just Ukrainians here, and it's all realising just where they're coming from and how we can establish this larger sense of community spirit about it. We did this in our tutorial program as well, and I think we're also trying to, again, I think it probably helps we have members of SLT who are sympathetic, who are interested in pushing this forward, because again, this is part of what QMC is becoming known for, and we have to live up to a reputation.
I think too, the people that we'll meet today will help with transition from the different stages, so from primary to secondary, to higher education. It's going to be quite interesting, really, to be able to make those connections so that you're aware, perhaps, of who is coming to you. You have a little profile of them before they start.
Yeah,
because those of us in the secondary might be able to provide
being able to make links with other schools has been wonderful. It's been like a really good way, because I was sort of thinking of doing this, but I just realised I have no idea where to go. Like, I know it's something we should do. I don't know where to start. And then Charlotte comes in, okay, so we've got these ideas, here's what we can do with it, here's some of the issues we can face. And from there, we've hopefully established base camp, we can now move forward. We're hopefully taking it further.
And I know locally we're looking at a Hampshire Education Forum for Hampshire and surrounding areas for schools, colleges and universities, and there's a meeting later on. But we do encourage any who are joining not locally to reach out to your local institutions, because it really does help having those partnerships and those support networks. I'm going to open up to our audience and see if there's any questions that they have for our esteemed panel. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Eleanor, I'm from Arts University Bournemouth in widening participation. I know you mentioned there's a networking thing later on, but I just wanted to kind of kick off with kind of asking what sort of activities would you guys want to see from kind of universities in terms of supporting your students into that transition, but also supporting them whilst they're there. Obviously, University of Winchester, you might have something to touch on there as well.
I'll say it back just in case people didn't hear, either in the audience or online. So very much asking a question about universities are very keen to be helping schools and colleges on this agenda. What is it you would like from us as universities? What could we be doing better, I suppose?
I think just in general, rather than universities specifically, it's being aware of what funding opportunities are available. I know there's a funding scheme for Ukrainian students. For a while, we were worried if they were going to be charged international student rates. That is there, but it's figuring out where to search for it, like being aware of what outreaches are there. I think it's also just, if possible, having some kind of like specialised, like one-to-one support, like a refugee hub, for want of a better term, somewhere where students can go, somewhere where someone who will be able to help them with their queries. Particularly when it comes to enrolment, because, well, if you've got students who have had to leave their country in a hurry, they may not necessarily have all the documentation, like being able to sort out visas and having to deal with the Home Office.
I think I've got a local link with Eastleigh College, and I go and support the students on their visits. So I go with them for their college interviews. If they go back for assessments, I go with them, and I've got a contact at Eastleigh College, which is great because you have that link together already. You say, actually, I've got this student, and then I go with them. So that really helps with that transition. Even from secondary school to college is a massive gap. So I do a lot of support taking them to the college.
And perhaps to a taster day, I know at Surrey University have a taster day for our students who are from the forces. So the military families are underrepresented in tertiary education. So perhaps there could be something that's a taster day for refugee children to explain what it's all about and what it looks like.
Opening up our campuses and inviting young people to come and experience university life, to find out more about what it is, but also particularly some of the challenges of the pathways into higher education that they may face as a particular cohort.
But even at primary level, I want my children to know, from whatever background they're from, that they can. If they work hard, there's no reason why they can't. And not just university, but colleges, apprenticeship, but to have their aims and their aspirations and inspiration and hope. Because that's what real poverty is to me, is when families don't have aspiration, inspiration and hope, and don't then feel part of the community. It's a general sort of thing here that's going on, but for universities to even give opportunities for primary school children to find out what is possible.
It's like Article 28 in the International Declaration of Human Rights that everyone should have access to higher education on the basis of merit, because education is meant to be this great equaliser. Like, you're meant to be, it doesn't matter where you come from, you're able to work correct. We see it with Michael Young, and I'm glad you mentioned poverty, because that's the thing. There's a Stephen Jay Gould quote where he says, "I'm less interested in the convulsions of Einstein's brain than the fact that many people of equal or greater talent live and die in cotton fields and sweatshops." So I think if you believe in education as some great leveler, some kind of great, like a rising tide that lifts all boats, I think you kind of have to really build that into it. You've got to allow for refugees and immigrants, regardless of like where they come from.
And I'll just add on behalf of the University of Winchester, who is a University of Sanctuary, there's over 36 recognised universities of Sanctuary, and that's growing in number. There are even more universities who are engaged in the Sanctuary network, but don't necessarily have the accreditation. And it's just worth reaching out, schools and colleges, to your universities, your local universities, who may or may not have a Sanctuary team, but they'll certainly have a schools and colleges linked team, and they'll be able to discuss with you any options around transition and support, aspiration raising, all those types of activities. So, you know, do approach your local institutions. Are there any other questions at all from the audience?
Yeah, I've got. People you've talked about mostly are people that have got status here, obviously refugees, but they've got status. A lot of the people I work with are still seeking asylum, and children then have perhaps different needs. So, for example, the environment is very hostile out there for families seeking asylum, even more so now because of all the news and the rhetoric. So are there any different support strategies you have in place to support children of families that are still seeking asylum and don't actually have any status here at the moment?
So just to reiterate, the question was, obviously there's a lot of support, and we know this is a society that's in place for more so for those who already have refugee status, and we've seen that quite a lot in the last few years with, fortunately, the way the government have reacted to the Ukrainian situation. But we have a growing number of young people and families who are still seeking asylum. So what specific support do you have in place as schools and colleges for those who may be in the process of seeking asylum?
It might be an idea to at least make sure the student is on side, because I found in my experience a lot of our refugee students speak better English than their parents do, and a lot of whom are very reluctant to pick up the phone or get an email because they feel any phone call that's like the Home Office, like rescinding, like basically like being like, sorry, you got to sling your hook, you're off. So I think just being able to, even just on a simple, this is like very simple, like practical level, just making sure that the students, whatever age they are, like understands what you're trying to do, know that they can come to you for supports, and that can potentially form like some of an interpreter between you and the parents, if they're worried about that. Because I think the big thing with a lot of like parents seeking asylum is they don't necessarily know who to turn to. With your school, with your college, with university, at least you'll know there's at least someone there who is sympathetic, and if they don't know the answer, they can seek out someone who does.
I would only add that I think we view asylum seekers and refugees in more of an international context, that they mean the same thing. Mm-hmm. And at whatever process they are along that line, they are refugees to us seeking sanctuary. So it isn't relevant to some extent in how we support them on whether they are in the category of asylum seeker or refugee. We treat them in the same way.
And I think I would echo that. I've got students who have a shorter term to stay, but they have the same support as whether they're on a long-term basis. We just offer the same support.
I think you'll probably find it's more of an issue post-16 when you're looking into further and higher education, where there is a differentiation around the funding and the type of student they are called, particularly those who are in the case of seeking asylum, will not be able to access student finance, will be considered an international student, and there's a lot more barriers to them in regards to being able to access education, which we're quite fortunate that pre-16 education, you're one and the same. You are a pupil or a student or a learner, but unfortunately there's a lot of legal terms that challenge access to education and engagement in education the further up you get.
One difference that we have in practical terms is that the asylum seeker children can get a dispersal order at very short notice, so that they leave school within 24 hours, which is quite upsetting to them and their friends. And that's one of the things about being one step ahead, perhaps anticipating that happening and how we're going to liaise with the new school, which could be in the north of England, and how we deal with that, whereas the refugee children are that little bit more settled.
Are you provided with details about the school that they are going to?
Yes, we're given details of the school, but nothing beyond that. They're not legally allowed us to tell us anything other than the school. But because we have quite a good relationship with the hotel, they do treat the children quite well, as kindly as we can encourage them to be, and give them a little bit more than they are legally allowed to do. But it is quite difficult, and we sometimes only get 24 hours notice to to try and get things together that they can take with them, some of their books, give them all of the exercise books that they've had, because otherwise they'll go with just nothing. So that's very important that we have a little bit of advance notice if possible.
And I imagine there's a lot of changes in curriculum that they have to deal with, and then also the community left behind, like you say, and how you're supporting them.
Yes, yes.
I think on that note as well, it might just be a support to, like domestic support. I think I've heard of at least a few cases where someone was like in the country not on a British passport, but their like documentation is being held from them by an abusive partner, and like it's setting the precedent for that, like how we scramble at short notice. Like it's having to deal with, like as you said, Elaine, like it's thinking like 2 steps ahead, like preparing for worst case scenarios. What do we do? But I think it's making students aware that they can access that. Like, I'm still surprised how many of my Ukrainian students still think, oh, I can't talk to him about this. He doesn't know. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's like, well, I'm not going to know unless you tell me. I know it's a big deal, but we'll have to do what we can.
I think sometimes it's children move from schools who don't use MTAS as support. They then come to a school where there is MTAS support, and then that opens up, actually, there is someone else who can help me. And I've had students who move from schools who don't use MTAS. They come to us, I get them MTAS involved, and then they get someone who speaks their own native language. So that really does help.
We'll come to the front and then to the one at the back.
Just to say about support and resources when students move. In Basingstoke, I volunteer with Care for Calais, and we have the local churches, and recently they cleared out one of the hotels. And what the churches do is phone the church in the local area and say, this bus is coming, can you please meet it? Can you meet and greet? Can you have a cup of tea ready? Can you open the church hall? Can you welcome the children, the families? This is what they've done, this is the information, and obviously once they're settled in the community, can you keep an eye on them and give us some feedback to make sure they're okay? So a lot of sort of church voluntary organisations in Basingstoke have that informal network, but very, very successful as a resource.
So it wasn't a question, but more a comment, which was really helpful, specifically related to Basingstoke as an example, but I know it happens across the country, is the network of local churches who are very much involved in that community and supporting refugees and asylum seekers and their families, and are really a key link for schools and colleges. I don't know whether you wanted to pick up on any of that.
I think especially how many refugees have a religious background. Like most of my attend, with Ukrainian, carol singing at Christmas is a much more culturally significant thing like there than it is over here. We have so many students coming from like sub-Saharan Africa or the Horn of Africa who have like Christian or Muslim backgrounds. So I think that's kind of unappreciated, and I didn't actually think about it until now, the role of faith and how much that feels like this kind of interfaith dialogue. That'd be really helpful.
Question there?
So I'm speaking from sixth form provision, and it's the other end. My concern is the students who have come from a refugee background, but by the time they get to us, they may not be identified because they've been in the system for maybe 3 years. However, they are still obviously disadvantaged with the family situation. How do other colleges identify these students as still having barriers to their progress?
So a question that's very much about post-16 provision, and I think both within further and higher education, is that at school level you very much get the identification quite easily of a young person if they come from a refugee or asylum seeker background. More commonly at post-16, it's up to the individual themselves, particularly if they've been a refugee for a number of years, to come forward and identify themselves. And how can colleges and potentially universities as well better identify and support those young people?
We run diagnostics, which we tend to do for GCSE English anyway, but we do for EAL learners as well. We need to know what level of competency they're at. At enrolments, if they are refugee, they're usually identified to us from one of our feeder schools, so we have at least that knowledge on record. We're good at keeping track of what needs someone have, whether they are like more SEN, whether they're coming from, whether they're a refugee background. So that gives us some idea of what we're working with. I know Charlotte and I will be enrolling personally the refugee students who are coming to Queen Mary's College next year. So there at least we'll be able to flag up any potential issues.
Great, and I know both at college and university level there's a lot around promoting self-identification of all types of different characteristics where you don't necessarily get that information through, utilising things like Refugee Week to put a positive spin and provide it as an opportunity for young people or individuals to come forward, or using enrolment mechanisms and having additional questions that you may get that information through and be able to then infiltrate and gain the young person's interests and information so that you can then speak to them about the support that is available. Any other questions at all? Yes.
Yes, I'm Ludmila Berezova. I'd like to ask you, what emotional support do you provide for the students in your schools and colleges?
Very simple question. Just asking what emotional support is available in schools and colleges. And I think that's really important given, the fact that there's a lot around the trauma that young people will be bringing with them, whatever their background, if they've come from a sanctuary background. Who wants to go first?
We've done a bit of draw and talk, so with our in-school ELSA draw and talk, I'm there from a translation point of view. We've started some ELSA sessions again with translation as well, so I think that's really important, that the emotional support is really important.
And just building on that, MTAS now do a BELSA, don't they, which is a bilingual ELSA. So you can have a Ukrainian first language speaker coming in to do ELSA work, which is invaluable, really, for our students. But I think it's also knowing our own level of competence, knowing that they can come to us, but there's a level beyond which we are really not qualified to deal, and to bring in the right help for them when that's needed
really
as a counsellor or something like that.
I agree, Eileen, because that's what we try and do at Queen Mary's College. Like, the support group is there if they need to talk about their problems. We also have a wellbeing team they can reach out to, but it may be they prefer to air things with us. Like, I've had so many of our students who probably should go to one different teacher. They've asked, could you talk to my teacher for me instead? So having to almost be the messenger there, I guess.
I think it's having that trusted adult, isn't it? That can liaise on their behalf. So this has happened, can you help me with this? And I think that's really important. They've got a trusted adult to go to.
And it goes back to that culture of when I do all staff on email, 73 staff, because I'm part-time and a lot, and we've got a preschool as well. But I expect every member of staff to actually be available as a safe adult should they be chosen. So that's a bit of a reactive, but on the proactive side, I've got a child and family support worker. She supports us with attendance and as a DSL or safeguarding in the morning, but she does cognitive behaviour therapy programs in the afternoon, and Lego therapy, some of you might have heard of, and she just continually works with the children, but also the parents, to try and make them feel as safe as possible, and to build up self-esteem and all the other things that we know are important, as well as the usual ELSA.
I think we ran a Lego therapy group last year for EAL students and any of the asylum seeker children, and it's a great tool because it's literally the instructions and you work together, and you don't need huge amount of English, and they can really work together. It's a great tool, Lego therapy.
I think I had a student who wanted to do my creative writing enrichment at QMC. The timetable changed so she couldn't, but I still kept her on the group, and I kept uploading exercises. I thought, even if you don't go into the sessions, you should still access this. You should still be able to write therapeutically. Because what I do for 5 minutes at the start of every session is something I call the purge, where for 5 minutes it's just free association writing. Anything that comes to mind. They can write it in English, they can write it in Ukrainian, Russian, German, any language that they spoke.
And I think some of it as well fits with what we were looking at previously about creativity and having those creative opportunities. Also linking with some partner organisations, whether it's the local authority, through MTAS, or other organisations. So later on today, in our expert speaker panel, we've got the International Rescue Committee and a speaker talking about the Healing Classrooms initiative. So there are a lot of resources out there. I believe we've got time for one last quick question.
Around therapeutic support. Locally in Winchester, we had Key Changes, a local music therapy charity that went into a number of local schools and ran sessions over several terms in schools with asylum seekers and refugees. And so I think it's about reaching out proactively to those organisations and also escalating with the local authority, with networks that you're involved in, that these are gaps. We know these are gaps in the region. I'm from Winchester City of Sanctuary myself. And this is nationally an issue. There isn't enough therapeutic support in schools, in colleges. There isn't funding around it. So I think it's escalating so that we know that there's that need and we're evidencing that need.
So it was a great example from our local City of Sanctuary, who worked with a music therapy organisation who went out into local schools, but the real need to be reaching out as schools and colleges to your local cities of sanctuary, to those local organisations, really challenging the local authority, because we all know that the provision is stretched, but unfortunately you have to be the one banging on the door the loudest to be able to get it out through into your schools. And then once there's some evidence for that, you know, you can work with other schools, build up on the funding for it, but really you have to be, unfortunately, the ones really pushing and knocking at that door. Really great point to end on. So I think we've pretty much come to time, and it's been an absolute pleasure to hear about all of your experiences. Thank you for giving your time. I know it can sometimes feel a daunting experience. It's much easier to sit or stand in front of a group of children or young people than it is your peers, but it's really appreciated. So thanks again, Louise, Eileen, Emma, and Jack. Thank you. So, we have 3 expert speakers who've joined us today and given their time. The first of which is Dr. Sarah Coles, who is the team leader at Hampshire MTAS, the Ethnic Minority and Travel Achievement Service, which is part of Hampshire County Council's Children's Services. MTAS work with children in Hampshire schools for whom English is an additional language. In recent years, this has included rising numbers of children who have come from overseas as refugees. Each of Hampshire's refugee children has their own unique backstory, which may include interests, skills, talents and dreams, as well as experiences of trauma and separation. What MTAS seek to do is to help each child settle into their new life in a new country for a support offer that is tailored to the needs of the individual. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first expert speaker, Dr. Sarah Coles.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right. Oh, here we go. My slides are all ready. That's perfect. So I've started off with just a very brief overview of the service that I work for at Hampshire County Council, the Ethnic Minority and Traveller Achievement Service. Completely long mouthful, so I'll shorten that to MTAS from here on in. We have been around for just over 30 years, and predominantly the work of the service has been supporting children who've come often as international new arrivals into Hampshire's schools and who are now learning English as an additional language. But in recent years, obviously, there's been a big increase for us and for schools in the county of children who've come with that refugee experience from all over the world, all sorts of different countries with different cultures and different languages represented in that cohort of children. So if you Google us, you can easily find us on our website presence and our Moodle. A lot of our stuff is still open access, so there is advice for schools, wherever you are, and settings, about working with unaccompanied asylum seekers, refugees, and all sorts of other children besides. So we're quite easy to find. One of the things that we think about in training, our teacher team would deliver training in schools to help practitioners upskill themselves and think about what they've got going on in terms of provision for these new arrival students. One of the things we try to encourage people to think about is what must that experience be like for those young people and their families. So we know that any new student joining a school as an in-year admission, let's say, might bring with them a range of different concerns. These are the things that are in green on the screen at the moment. So they might have changed school, they might miss their friends, they might wonder about where are the toilets, are they going to settle in, all of these sorts of worries. Migrant children will have on top of the green a whole load of extra things that might be concerns to them. So, for example, worrying that people might laugh if they were opening their mouths to speak English. Would the people laugh at them? Will they be able to find their way around? Will they understand what's being taught in the different lessons that they're joining? And young people who are coming as refugees might have on top of the green and the red concerns a whole load of extra things that aren't really very commonly experienced by lots of children joining our schools, but very much will be at the forefront of refugee children's minds. So some children, at the moment, for example, with all the Ukrainian children we have in our schools, There's a lot of thought about will they ever be going home again. Some of them might not have homes to go back to any longer, or a very, very different situation if they ever do manage to go home. Are people safe? The relatives that they have that are back in country of origin, are those people safe? Where are they going to live? There's often a pattern of frequent movement as people come over from different countries, settle here, and then need to find a more permanent living arrangement. So there's quite a lot of different things that will be occupying children's minds. I know a lot of these concerns will be adult concerns, but they're living with their families, and so this will be very much part of the conversations around the meal tables and things that are going on at home for young people. Quite different from somebody that's just changing schools and has always lived in the UK and doesn't have those background experiences. So as a service, we've come with some messages around good practice for young people. Some of these are generic, so any child coming as an international new arrival, not necessarily with any kind of refugee experience, we would advise that schools put them in the right year group, don't back year them, try to put them with young people who can be positive language, learning and behaviour role models. That will be the best place for the young people to start making new friends, finding their feet and beginning to rebuild their lives in this new place. We encourage schools to support these young people to access the full mainstream curriculum, so not to withdraw them from subjects, not to have them sent off to the library to sit by themselves to learn English off a computer program, but to be there in the classrooms with their peers, joining in with things. And that's a very strong message for people on my team that we deliver in schools. And then to allow settling in time, because there's a period of adjustment which might be longer perhaps for children who bring experiences of trauma with them into classrooms. They might be more unsettled or more distracted by their other concerns as they're trying to settle in. So there are additional things in relation to our refugee children for people to consider. We're very keen that people give full notice is paid to the language skills that young people bring. So what is the young person's other language or other languages, and how can we leverage what they know already to help them do the best in engaging with their education here in their new English-speaking environment and their classrooms. So we're very keen that schools pay attention to first language and encourage young people to keep their first language skills going, not to park it or to abandon it, but to keep those things going. A lot of our young people, in their heads, they'll be thinking, well, one day they might go back to the country that they came from if things settle down and it's conducive to that. And they will need those language skills if that was ever going to be an option for them. For refugee children, it is particularly important that in schools people are consistent and predictable. So things like visual timetables, they support a lot of learners, but for the young person to know what the lesson is now and what is coming next is quite a security building thing, and that's a very useful and very simple strategy that schools can factor in. I'm going to talk a little bit more about ELSA support in a moment because we've done some very particular things in response to refugee populations. But that kind of emotional literacy support can be extremely valuable for young people who've experienced trauma in their lives. And so we also advise that schools get training for their staff on trauma-informed practice. And there's quite a lot of that sort of thing available, much of it free. And involve parents, yes, I should have clicked one more time, but involving parents is crucial. Parents can feel, if they've come from another country and are used to a different system, it's remarkably difficult to find a way of engaging with what's going on in our schools in the UK, especially where things might be very different from what people are used to before. So empowering parents to help them become involved and carry on supporting their child's education is a very positive step that people can take. Now, this is about our BELSA, our bilingual ELSA support. And we were able to train some of our bilingual assistant team. These are our Ukrainian and Russian-speaking members of the team because that's where the funding stream came from. We've trained our bilingual assistants to be ELSAs, Emotional Literacy Support Assistants. So they've had the same training from the educational psychology team as the regular monolingual English-only ELSAs. But our ELSAs, our bilingual ELSAs, bring into the mix the other language and the knowledge and understanding of those children's home cultures, and sometimes a little bit of those experiences. They share some of that terrain with the young people. Now, the idea behind this was that we knew that some of the children coming would have baggage, they would have experienced trauma, and there would be things that they were maybe finding difficult to deal with. And we've noticed this in their approaches, how hard it's been for some of them to make new friends, for example, or to join in school, or to follow the rules, all sorts of different ways that their behaviour was telling us they were really finding it difficult to cope. The idea behind the bilingual ELSA was that they would work collaboratively with the school-based ELSA, and together they would plan the emotional literacy support sessions, and they would together deliver that with the child, either individually or in small groups sometimes. This happens in schools. And then together they would review that provision. And that means that working towards a particular target over, let's say, a period of 6 weeks, there might be 6 sessions that are delivered in that collaborative way. And when our bilingual ELSA moves on to another school, the child has still forged a link with somebody who is still there in the school. So there's that consistency. There's somebody that knows them very well, knows what happened in those sessions, and also knows how to get back in touch with us if it becomes apparent that some more sessions might be needed later on. So that's why it was such a collaborative model. And I have to say as well that this is a national first. Having bilingual ELSAs trained in the way that we've done and working in this way hasn't happened anywhere else. I've been in touch with the ELSA network, a national thing, to check all this out, so I'm not making this up. And to date, we've got over 50 children in Hampshire schools have been receiving those sessions. And you can see the image there, the little box of big thoughts. That's a dual language resource that you can get from Bear Us in Mind. And that's one of the charitable organisations that's putting out materials that schools can access that are there available in dual language versions. So you do have a look for that. On our Moodle, we signpost them. So that's been one of the things that I think I'm most proud of that we've achieved as a service, and that we're able to make that offer to children in our schools. Another is our Persona Doll programme. This is really aimed at much younger children, so perhaps year 1, year 2. So it's not really something that you'd see in secondary schools. It's really much more about primary. Persona dolls, there's a picture of one there. They're kind of child-sized dolls. And they're a way of bringing into a classroom elements of, or mirrors and windows, I suppose. So it's important that children can identify with aspects of the doll and the doll's persona, but also that the doll can bring in a social story or a problem for the children to think about. Now, the social stories that we have developed for these dolls, for example, here, there's a social story that schools can access from our Moodle. So the doll might be borrowed, and it might come to visit a classroom, and the doll might bring the experience of living in a hotel. And all that might mean for that child, that means that their home experience at the moment is quite different from most of the other kids in their class. So what does that really mean for the doll? What does the doll feel about living in a hotel? And what are the difficulties that causes for the doll? So you can see in the social story here, they feel a little bit embarrassed about that because they can't invite their friend back to play, and they're not quite sure how to manage some of those things. So you use the doll and the social story to encourage a class of very young children to just think about what could the solutions be. What could that doll do about the situation that they're living in? And then the children share their ideas, and then the doll spends a week not in class but thinking about it all, and then comes back and thanks all the children, and then says goodbye to them. So persona dolls are a lovely way of being able to work with some of these very difficult concepts with very young children, to encourage children to develop their understanding of what some of these things might mean for real people, and therefore how can we help our friends. So that's the sort of thing we've been doing for very young learners. For literate, so usually these are now for older children, and this is very much about encouraging children to continue with the first language skills that they have. So our refugee children, a lot of them have been educated in different countries of the world with a different language being their main language for learning. So when they come, what we are trying to encourage them to do is to use the skills, use their literacy skills and all of the learning that they bring with them to help them access the curriculum being delivered here. And our study skills program addresses this in I think a rather innovative way, if I do say so myself. So it trains the children how to use the first language skills and various ICTs, for example, immersive reader, or on YouTube you can put the subtitles on in a range of different languages, and there are other apps as well that the program covers. So each week our bilingual assistant will visit the child in school, and in withdrawal they will be sharing the new app and modelling what you do with it, how to use it, and then the young people get the chance to have a go themselves. So for example, with BBC Teach, there's lots of video materials there, and the children will be finding out how to put the right subtitles on so that they can understand more of the content there. And it might be that the topic was about plants, or it might be that it was about rivers, or whatever they're learning about in their mainstream lessons. There are ways of tapping into the knowledge, the language, all of these things using the child's first language skills. So yes, you can see some of the apps there, and these are ways of empowering those young people to properly value and leverage what they're bringing with them into our classrooms. So that's another thing that we've been doing. And we've also, as part of all of this, it became apparent to me as the team leader that actually our own staff were feeling a little bit wobbly about working with children who were here as refugees, perhaps who'd experienced trauma in their own lives. And that did cause some concerns. So another thing that we're doing at the moment is training people and encouraging people to focus on, for example, we've had an input from the International Rescue Committee. They've come and talked to our team, and we've got some more things lined up to train our own team. In terms of disseminating some of our knowledge about refugees and asylum seekers on our blog, which is open access, we've written some articles that are very short but quite accessible for a wide readership there, just to help people think about some of the issues and some of the possible solutions or possible ways forward of supporting these young people. So yes, we've got quite a lot going on there to help our own team feel more confident about some of the work that they are doing, so that they can then help other colleagues in schools also develop their own knowledge and understanding, so that they improve with the levels of confidence that they feel working with these young people as well, which I hope goes down positively. So far, all the feedback's been very good anyway. Okay, so I've got to... Yeah, I've done all right on my timings, because I'm normally terrible and I overrun really badly. I think I might even have allowed time if there's a question anybody has. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was fantastic and spot on time as well, so thank you for that. So we move on to the second of our expert speakers, and we are joined by Jude, I believe, is next. Jude is joining us from the International Rescue Committee as one of their education officers, who's responsible for leading the Healing Spaces programme. Before joining the IRC, he managed education and child protection projects in Syria's most conflict-affected regions, and managed the delivery of more than 250 training sessions delivered to more than 5,500 educators and service providers across Syria, covering topics from child protection, psychosocial support, gender-based violence, and classroom management. So please, again, round of applause to introduce Jude.
Hi everyone, very glad to be here with you today. Today we're going to talk about the healing classrooms approach. And by the end of this session, you'll be able to explain the impacts of trauma and toxic stress on students. Well-being and learning, and identify ways that trauma-informed practices such as our healing classrooms approach work to support children's recovery. So just to start off with an introduction on the International Rescue Committee, the IRC is a global humanitarian organization that was founded in 1933 by the one and only Albert Einstein. And we currently work in over 40 crisis-affected countries, as well as host communities such as the UK, providing support that help individuals whose lives and livelihoods got shattered by crises to survive, recover, and gain control over their future. In the UK, the IRC launched its programs in early 2021, and we currently provide services such as orientation, leadership, language, and education. At the IRC, we have an international commitment to education. We believe that education is the ultimate empowerment tool for children, families, and communities to survive and recover from conflict or crisis. And as it has been evident, poor access to education can undermine people's potential to improve their lives. With that in mind, we currently work in 20 countries, providing teacher training and supporting students to resettle and thrive using highly researched, trauma-informed approaches. In 2022, the IRC's Healing Classrooms approach, which we're going to talk about in a few, was brought to the UK to help better prepare schools to help pre-settle refugee children. As a result of war, conflict, and many crises, in the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen a huge increase in the number of people that are taking life-changing and often quite dangerous journeys to reach safe places where they can seek asylum and refuge. With that in mind, with the plethora of different traumatic experiences that these communities have faced, it's very important and very pivotal for educators, organizations, and everyone supporting children and young people to raise their awareness on traumas and their experiences in order to improve and further tailor our support to help them recover and survive. Hence, in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to have a little crash course on trauma and toxic stress in forcibly displaced communities and explore just one possible trauma-informed approach, our healing classrooms approach, that is used in schools to aid in the recovery of these communities. This poem, written by Warshan Shire, reflects Warshan's journey escaping her country, Somal. As I read it, try to imagine yourself in Warshan's shoes. Try to imagine what kind of traumas Warshan and plenty of other refugees have faced in their life, and try to think about how the traumas have impacted their well-being. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you. The boy you went to school with is holding a gun bigger than his body. You only leave home when home won't let you stay. No one leaves home unless home chases you. Fire under feet, hot blood in your belly. It's not something you ever thought about doing, even though you carried the anthem under your breath, only tearing up your passport in an airport toilet, sobbing as each mouthful of paper made it clear that you wouldn't be going back. You have to understand, no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. No one spends days and nights in the stomach of a truck, feeding on newspaper, unless the miles traveled means something more than the journey. No one leaves home until home is a sweaty voice in your ear saying, leave. Run away from me now. I don't know what I've become, but I know that anywhere is safer than here. Poems are great resources to reflect such overwhelming experiences. And we encourage educators who are part of our program to use poems to reflect and introduce ideas such as migration, refuge, asylum, and resettlement. Evidence has shown that typically a young person who has been displaced will experience 27 different traumatic experiences by the time they reach to their new country. 27, and that's just an average. Thus, we have categorized different traumas that young people face into three main categories, as can be seen in the triple trauma paradigm. In the flight component, it represents the different traumatic experiences that children have faced while they were still living in the country of origin. And these could be exposure to intense violence, stress, and trauma, multiple losses, like the losses of their home, friends, family, and so on. The displacement component represents the different traumatic experiences that young people have faced during their escape, such as self-doubt, feelings about leaving land and loved ones. And finally, the relocation component represents the different traumatic experiences that the children have faced after they've resettled in the new host country, which can be lack of access to proper resources, uncertainty, and threat. we encourage educators who partake in our programs to use this paradigm as a reference of what areas they need to learn more about, to learn about their students' experiences. Sometimes, I think it's obvious to all of us that it can be very re-triggering for people, especially young people, to ask them directly about their experiences, to share their experiences. In a nutshell, this could be considered as the first step towards helping students to recover and resettle in the UK. So moving on to the immediate impacts of trauma on the brain. So what happens to the brain in a traumatic experience? The brain goes into survival mode during a traumatic experience, and one of 3 immediate involuntary responses take place: flight, fight, or freeze. And while in this state, our primitive brain takes over and helps us survive the danger, the imminent danger that we're in. And some people struggle to leave this survival mode after the event is over, especially if they experience multiple traumatic experiences. And some people also feel ashamed of how they reacted during the traumatic experience, even though it's involuntary and they have no control over the response that takes place. So it's very important for us to assure these people that there's no ideal response, and it's okay. So let's dive a bit, just a bit, into the pathology of toxic stress and trauma. The brain has these things called neurons, okay? And for the sake of simplification, let's consider them as switches. And each neuron or switch has a different function. And in normal brain development, these neurons or switches form connections with each other that help us do functions like behavior control, motor skills, emotion regulation, language, and so on. And these connections form greatly or form strong connections. These neurons, form strong connections in children when children exist in safe and nurturing environments, safe and predictable nurturing environments, where they receive consistent support from adults. As these connections in the brain form rapidly during childhood, severe adversity can impede brain development, and in fact, the connections that I just talked about break off. The adversity can cause huge issues for children, such as inability to learn, retain information, regulate their emotions, and control their behavior. However, children are incredibly resilient, and safe spaces with consistent, caring adults and peers can help children's brain to heal. This is a short stroll on memory lane, in one of my visits in a school that we used to work in Syria, where we established a child-friendly space, I see a child who grabbed me by the hand very enthusiastically to show me the work that they've done in the child-friendly space. Bearing in mind, the school used to be a prison used by ISIS. And the room that we established the child-friendly space in used to be a prison cell where ISIS used to execute people in. So the child was telling me how happy he is that they were able to transform this room into a space where he can heal, he can be the best version of himself, and how happy he was to be working with his teachers and his peers to create a place where they can feel comfortable in. So children are incredibly resilient. So these are the common responses to toxic stress that many educators observe in their schools. To name a few, cognitively, children can have trouble concentrating and filtering distractions. They'd have persistent thoughts about traumatic events. Physiologically, children would have problems sleeping, would experience stomach and heart and headaches. Emotionally, they could feel afraid or anxious. They'd feel agitated and irritable. And behaviorally, they'd have trouble managing their behavior and they avoid social contact. So now that we've established what toxic stress does to these communities, let's explore together what the Healing Classrooms approach can do to help children recover. First of all, let's introduce and define what the Healing Classrooms is. The Healing Classrooms approach is the IRC's global strategy to supporting children's recovery through creating safe and stable environments in schools. It's built on 30 years of education in emergencies research and field testing. It was adapted for use in mainstream schools in resettlement countries from 2016 onwards to respond to the influx of refugees arriving in Europe and the US. And it was adapted for UK use in 2022 to support those in the UK supporting refugee and asylum-seeking children and youth. The Healing Classrooms approach has three main objectives: preparing a safe place to land, building a community for learning, and fostering academic success. So let's zoom in on the specifics. The Healing Classrooms approach focuses on expanding and fortifying the teacher's positive role in making and maintaining healing spaces in which all children can recover, grow, and develop. So these healing classrooms, or a healing classroom, is a space that creates and strengthens a student's self-control, sense of belonging, sense of self-worth, positive relationships, and intellectual stimulation. So overall, the Healing Classrooms approach was created to reverse the impacts of toxic stress. These are some strategies we cover in our program to prepare a safe place to land, such as establishing consistency, as Sarah has previously touched upon, orientation in school community, providing a buddy mentoring program and exit cards and designated safe space, as well as positive classroom discipline rather than just punishment, using the clean state approach and embed social emotional learning in teachings. So the most important thing about these techniques is that we ensure the student, the new student, feels safe and is capable of knowing what to expect during the days, and have a support network which they would have right from the get-go, right from the first day at school. This game is a beautiful one, and it allows students to self-reflect and celebrate their identities. It also allows students to be positive and to shun away from the negative cloud that the trauma has them in. Their trauma has them in. Such as, I am Syrian, the oldest sister, intelligent, multilingual, Muslim, I have a supportive family, good friends, I dream, and so on. In all of our programs, we use case studies to help convey messages across, and this is one of those case studies about a Syrian girl called Maha, who's been having difficulties adjusting to the UK education system. And what we do in our program is that we split participants into breakout rooms, if done online or in groups, and we ask them to discuss ways or strategies they can use to best support Maha. Now, we talked about the healing classrooms and toxic stress. But how do we go about introducing it to people and educators in the UK? Through our training sessions. We've got 3 healing classrooms training sessions. The basics course is a 3-part, 1.5-hour one. delivered online or in person. The CPD course, Continuing Professional Development course, which is now accredited, is a 5-part, 1.5-hour course delivered either online or in person. And the Healing Classrooms Champions training, which was newly introduced, is a training of trainers course for those interested who have completed the CPD course. And the one that I lead is the Healing Spaces program, which is a 2-part, 2-hour course delivered to those who provide assistance in non-school settings. So what do the workshops include? Introduction to trauma, toolkits for schools, sharing of good practice and key strategies, as well as refugee voices and testimonies, discussions, case studies, and coping strategies. And one of the aims of our workshops is to build a network of expertise within and across schools. In our sessions, our participants are experts from a range of fields. We encourage participants to utilize each other's knowledge and experience, to engage critically with the content. We also have a community Facebook group and a newsletter to ensure past participants can easily keep in touch if they require future support. And we have worked with past participants to write articles, make art exhibitions, and case studies. These are the key resources that participants will get once they participate in our workshops. We've got 2 country-specific teacher briefings, one on Ukraine and one on Afghanistan. We also got IRC social and emotional intervention, games and lesson banks, and our handbooks that participants use throughout the course of our trainings. We've got 3 Healing Classrooms, Healing Spaces, and the Healing Classrooms CPD course, and we've got plenty of other resources online. Have I mentioned that all of our workshops are free? Yeah, free is always good. Yeah, and we've got plenty of other resources on our website. This is just snapshots from our website. It's always up to date. It has everything on it in case anyone would like to register for the workshops. Since the fruition of the program in 2022, we've managed to train 1,977 educators coming from 837 organizations and schools who in turn support 11,000 refugee students. Any reflections and questions, please? On the website, yes, everything is on the website. Plus our Facebook community page. Okay, this is in case anyone wants to keep in touch or book a session by scanning the QR code. And yeah, thank you for listening. I hope I did not bombard you with information. And thank you again.
Thanks, Jude. And if you didn't get that, they are free. The workshops and the resources are free and available on the website. So some really useful resources there. Thank you. So we have our last expert speaker, and we have Lydia joining us from the Refugee Education UK charity. She is a higher education coordinator where she manages the scholarships from Schwab and Westheimer Trust, alongside providing guidance and support to other refugees and asylum seekers pursuing university. Prior to joining RE UK, Lydia has had experience in social research, humanitarian programming and student support within higher education. She holds a Master's in International Development from the University of Winchester and is here to talk to us today about the key challenges and opportunities in HE for asylum-seeking students. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, yes, I'm really happy to be here to talk with you all. It's been amazing to see and hear the insights from everyone in different areas of expertise, so I'm hoping that I can add a little bit to that. So, as Sarah mentioned, I work with an organization called Refugee Education UK. just going into a bit about what we do. So we are a charity based in London, but working in different spots in the UK, that works to support young refugees and asylum seekers in accessing education here in the UK. Not only that, but doing well in education once they're there, and using that education to build a brighter future for themselves, their families, and their communities. We do that in three main ways. So one pillar of work that we do is around education access. So again, helping young people to understand how the UK education system works and how to enter into it. A lot of that work is doing trainings for young people, such as how to progress through college. It also includes our National Advice Line service, whereby anyone in the UK can ask questions about anything they might have in their educational journey. And then we also provide casework support when it comes to FE, HE, and also increasingly schools as well. Our second main pillar of work includes education thriving. So again, helping young people to do well in education once they're already enrolled. Our biggest program within that pillar is our educational mentoring program, which is based in London, Oxford, and Birmingham. And then finally, beyond the direct work and support that we do with young people, we also want to contribute to the work that a lot of organizations are doing to make the UK educational space more welcoming for people from asylum-seeking backgrounds. So we have an amazing research team. My research colleague is going to speak in just a moment. But we have a research team that carries out and disseminates research about the lived experiences of people from this background, and also uses that research to advocate for young people, especially with the help of youth advocates who do have lived experience. And beyond that, we also do training for institutions and practitioners who work with young people in the asylum system. So that's a bit about what we do. As Sarah mentioned, I'm going to mainly be talking about the barriers and enabling factors on the pathway to education for young asylum seekers and refugees. First inside the UK, but then looking outside the UK, looking into what possible pathways there are for young people outside the UK. First, going to talk about barriers to higher education within the UK, and I just want to recognize that for many of you who work with young people in this community, these barriers won't be new. Unfortunately, there are barriers and challenges that have existed in the education system for a long time. So all of this won't necessarily be new, but still good to cover for people who might not be as familiar. So, and I should say, this research, these insights are derived both from our research in doing casework and mentoring with young people, but also insights derived from research that we've done, including most recently research that we've done in collaboration with the University of Warwick, looking at young people's experiences when accessing higher education in Coventry. So one challenge, especially one that has been verbalized in the research that I mentioned, is the characterization of the pathway to university as a long and difficult journey. This means that for young people who come, especially if they're kind of past the primary and secondary school age, they feel that they have to start from, quote, the bottom of the ladder, meaning they have to maybe start with ESOL, level 1, 2, 3, and then they have to go into a level 1 course, level 2, level 3 at a further education college. And while that journey is possible and many people do it, it does take time, it does take money, especially if young people are at a stage or an age where they can't access funding. And then beyond that, that characterization of that long and difficult journey, there are also several immediate barriers to university. Again, many of you will be familiar with this, but one of which is university entry requirements, namely English and academic requirements. So for example, we've had young people who, even though they're studying ESOL at a local further education college, those ESOL courses might not necessarily prepare them for university level academic English. Beyond that, we also have stifled aspirations, again, needing to go through a long process before they need to get to university can add to that, but also the cost of university. Like was previously mentioned, individuals who are still going through the asylum process, who are asylum seekers, they can't access student finance. So even though scholarships are available, like sanctuary scholarships, those still are competitive, and many people might not get them on their first round, so they might have to take a gap year. So that can also be kind of challenging. And beyond these, there are also more longer-term hindering factors. So one of which especially that we see can be lack of information or getting incorrect information. So sometimes, people don't know where to go in order to find out about how to apply to university. Other times it could be that, and this is due to no one's fault. The immigration system is complex and not straightforward, but sometimes young people get incorrect information as to what they're entitled to. So it could be that a young person is entitled to student finance, but for some reason that they're told that they aren't. Or a young person might be told that a course at a further education college is free, when in fact for them it won't be free, and they start the course and all of a sudden halfway through they get a bill for £4,000. So yeah, lack of information or incorrect information can be a big factor. Another one, which Jude in his presentation really captured well, is instability. So that includes trauma, as Jude mentioned, but other factors such as physical instability, so that could be housing insecurity and having to relocate, which can be disruptive. And then finally, another longer-term hindering factor is simply the asylum, well, I say simply, but it's not, it's the opposite of simple, whereby it could include factors such as having someone's asylum claim rejected, so they have to go through the appeals process. It could include factors such as having to renew their limited leave to remain status, which is both a timely and a costly process. So having to deal with challenges, inherent in the asylum system also present significant factors. Significant barriers. So when it comes to addressing some of these barriers, we definitely don't have all the answers, and these definitely don't represent all of the ways to overcome these barriers, and especially because it can be quite based on a case-by-case basis as to the best solutions. But some of these factors, again, have derived from our experience, but also the research that we've done. So one enabling factor is, this has been mentioned several times throughout this conference, is interpersonal relationships. So this could be a mentor from a charity or at a school. This could be buddies, like a buddy system in a certain institution. It could be role models who have been in the same situation and have gone through higher education already, that can not only provide accurate guidance and information to young people, but they can also be that voice of encouragement that young people need in order to, help push them on their journeys. Another really big factor that acts as an enabler is community support networks. So again, as has been mentioned, these could include cultural communities, these could include faith communities, these could include local authorities, local student initiatives that, again, not only represent a source of information and guidance, but also provide a sense of belonging to young people in the spaces that they're in. And then finally, the resilience and determination of young people is something that we always see, that even though they're presented with these challenges in accessing education at different levels, their resilience and determination is really a big factor in what helps them continue on this journey. And then zeroing in on the local universities, and also this could include local colleges as well, but we see that local universities do have the space and the chance to play an important role as a bridge for young people in the area into higher education. So this could include providing tailored information and guidance to the spaces where young people are, such as local home office accommodations like hotels. This could also include nurturing aspirations for university in various ways. So an example that we talked about in the workshop was doing open days or taster days for young people in the community. And these, I had the pleasure of going to one at the University of Warwick a few weeks ago, whereby young people at a local hotel were given a coach, or the coach was paid for them in order to come to the university to do this open day, an open day that was specifically tailored for asylum-seeking families. And what is really nice about that is that it not only lets people know about how to get to that university and the options that are there, but it also helps them to envision themselves there. It makes university not as much of a daunting place for them to conceive of. And then finally, another way that the local universities and local colleges can assist is helping young people meet university level qualifications. So earlier, I was really pleased to hear that that here in Winchester, you've done English courses for young people, and that really helps because again, other English level or English courses, they may not be tailored to university level English. So English courses or kind of pre-sessional projects or courses that can help young people get a taste of what university is like, and again, to see themselves as to see university as a place where they can be and some place where they can achieve. So that was kind of challenges that we've seen, again, not comprehensive, but some of the challenges that we see and some of the enabling factors as young people pursue university within the UK. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ideas and possibilities of supporting young people in higher education who are outside of the UK, namely through educational complementary pathways. So complementary pathways in general, when we say complementary pathways, we're referring to safe and regulated ways that refugees can relocate from the country in which they first claimed asylum to a safe third country. And complementary pathways encompass a range of kind of themes. So there could be resettlement schemes, there could be employment pathways. But when we say educational complementary pathways, we're referring to scholarship programs, traineeship programs, apprenticeship programs that are either hosted by a private organization or community, or that are community hosted or are institutionally based. And usually when we mention these pathways, they're often encompass tertiary education, so higher education. So the biggest rationale for why we're even talking about educational complementary pathways is the fact that only 7% of refugees around the world have access to higher education. So there's obviously a need to help young people around the world who have experience of forced migration to get into university. But beyond the statistic, here at our UK, we also see high levels through our National Advice Service. We also see high levels of inquiries from young people who are outside of the UK that are very determined to continue their education and get to university, but because of where they are, because they can't get to the UK, they're unable to. And we know that if these young people did have the chance to go to university, there would be a demonstrable impact, not only for themselves, but also for their communities and the societies which they live in, from which they come. So running parallel to this need that we can see is an opportunity for pathways, especially here in the UK. So a big factor that's again an enabling factor for this opportunity is the Global Task Force on Third Country Education Pathways. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that is the Global Task Force is a global organization that brings together NGOs, UN bodies, international associations to promote and develop educational pathways around the world, not just the UK. And so how they do it is they help develop pilot programs around the world, and they also share resources on best practices that they see. So beyond this kind of global expert community that is dedicated to global pathways, there is also an appetite within the UK for these pathways. So here in the pilot that I'm just about to talk about, we've seen about a dozen universities, the University of Winchester being one, express interest in participating in these pathways. And then besides that, there is the fact of the Nationality and Borders Bill and the Illegal Migration Act, which have stated intentions to build more safe and regulated pathways to the UK for refugees. So that's another kind of aspect of this opportunity. So from that need and that opportunity, something that we've been really fortunate at RUK to be a part of is what's called the Displaced Students Initiative, or DSI. And this is a collaboration between us, the Student Action for Refugees, Mosaic, which is another refugee support organization, as well as the University of Sanctuary, to try to create a pilot educational pathway here in the UK. And together with our founding universities, again, the University of Winchester being a really key one, we're working with, we're working from advisory support from UNHCR, UKISA, again, the Global Task Force, as I mentioned, and also the World University Service of Canada, who are currently running their educational complementary pathway. And so what DSI encompasses is two main prongs of approaching this pathway. So in the most practical sense, this looks like an international scholarship program whereby the recipients of the scholarship are granted student visas to come to the UK, and we expect that they'll be given the 2-year work permission, or the graduate visa, after they graduate, which will enable them to work for 2 years. And what makes DSI different than an international scholarship that I know some universities are holding right now is that we also provide extensive wraparound support. That includes helping the selected candidates with travel arrangements, getting their visas or their conventional travel documents in this case. It also includes having a welcome program and orientation, and also getting them set up with on-the-ground or on-campus services that will be really helpful for them as they start their university experience in the UK. So yeah, and then the other side of that, which at this point has been a bit more challenging, admittedly, but another side of that, but equally important, is the advocacy side. Because we realize that as it stands, this pathway isn't as durable as we'd like it to be. We want to work with the government in order to make these kinds of pathways more sustainable. For example, making it so that students who come over, they're automatically given indefinite leave to remain, kind of like people who come on the resettlement schemes are given indefinite leave to remain automatically. So again, as I said, the advocacy bit is still a work in progress, but that is another really important piece to this, is that we're not only bringing students over to study, but we're also making this pathway a durable solution for people who are going to relocate to the UK for a longer period of time. So in terms of what our current pilot looks like, we're hoping, this has been a work in progress, but we're hoping to bring the first small cohort of students to the UK this September 2024. But definitely a partnership between different actors. So the students themselves, right now, they are refugee students, high school graduates from the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. Kakuma is one of the world's largest refugee camps. And to reach out to the students and to select the students in this program, we work closely with our host country referral partner called Elamisha Kakuma. Elamisha is a really amazing organization that helps to facilitate access to university for refugees at Kakuma refugee camp through their college or university preparatory course. So we work closely with them, relatively new partnership, but we work closely with them to select the students, to help the students get their conventional travel documents, to help the students take in-country English tests in Kenya. So they are a really big, important partner in our pilot. And then, of course, the universities at which these students will study once they come to the UK. So again, University of Winchester has been a really instrumental part in getting this pilot off the ground and kind of helping us strategize how we're going to do this. And then we've also been thankful to have the University of Exeter and the University of Edinburgh in our current pilot as well. And then in terms of the end-to-end management, and like I mentioned, when it comes to getting helping these students get visas, when it comes to arranging travel, when it comes to helping them settle in the UK, that's led by us. So RUK leads the group of core partners. As I mentioned, Mosaic, STAR, are some of the other core partners, but RUK is kind of leading the end-to-end management and logistics of the pilot. So as exciting and happy as this pilot is, it has come with its challenges that we've had to work through. So one of the biggest challenges was that the students in Kakuma refugee camp weren't kind of the original. It wasn't the plan originally for them to be in this pilot. Originally, we were hoping to bring over really amazing Afghan women who were living in Pakistan to do this pilot. However, due to the hostile immigration system in Pakistan and due to the changing nature of the immigration system both in the UK and Pakistan, it was really, at the end of the day, we weren't able to bring them over. So that was really frustrating, and even more frustrating for the young women that we were hoping to bring over. But that has been, a challenge that we encountered. So we've had to pivot to working with our partners at Elamisha Kakuma. Another challenge is meeting university requirements, or rather helping the students to meet university requirements. And this challenge really, it's not that much different from challenges that young refugees and asylum seekers here in the UK face when applying for example, sanctuary scholarships. When it comes to meeting the English level requirement and academic level requirement, those challenges are still there for these students. However, it's a bit exacerbated by the fact that we're helping these students do it remotely. So we're having to book remote English tests. We're having to work with Elamisha Kakuma to try to finagle the academic equivalency of these high school graduates and how that tracks to the UK academic levels. And then finally, when it comes to actually helping the students come to the UK, another big aspect is getting the conventional travel documents, which hasn't been an easy process. That is a work in process that we're trying to get now, but making sure that they have the right documents to be able to come over to the UK and that they get that in time to study in September is something that we're working through right now. And so amidst of all of these challenges, I think one of the biggest lessons learned is, and again, this has been echoed in different aspects of throughout today in this conference, but a really big part is bringing together different partners with different levels of experience and different services in order to put this whole pilot together. So again, like I mentioned, Elamisha Kakuma is such an important component, being an in-country, on-the-ground organization that can work directly with students. Not only that, but support services at the universities that these students will go to in terms of knowing how we can connect students to the support that would be good to offer them. But also other organizations like STAR, Student Action for Refugees. We've been looking to work with them in order to have maybe a buddy program for when these students come over, so that they have a buddy from the STAR groups in each universities to help them get acclimated to university life in the UK. So definitely exciting, but not straightforward. But we've been really grateful for the partners that we are working with in order to hopefully get this pilot running by September. So hopefully I'm not over time, but thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions about any of that. Yes.
Hi, just a quick one. You talked about some universities are offering pre-sessional support. Do you know how many, and do you know if they're charging for it?
Ooh, that's a good.
Roughly, are a lot of universities offering it or not?
That's a good question. So I actually don't know the number. I know names of a few. So for example, Glasgow, I was working with a young person who needed pre-sessional English there. So I don't know the number, but I know that sometimes it can be more affordable or less affordable. So for example, the one that I'm thinking of, it cost around 170, which again can also be prohibitive, which is why when organizations or universities provide a more affordable pre-sessional English courses, that's much yeah, much more of an enabling factor. But yeah, I'm sorry I don't have those numbers. Yes, yes.
Whether that is being adapted to help these students.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, as I said, I don't know the number, but I do know of really great examples of, if it's not pre-sessional English per se, it's university prep programs. So for example, one I'm thinking of is Birbeck's Compass program, whereby they offer workshops and events to, asylum-seeking students, and part of that includes English. Another one I'm thinking of is the Open Learning Initiative, which is run by someone that's a faculty member at the University of Bristol. And in that, it's a 12-week university prep program for asylum seekers and refugees, and I know English courses is another component of that. So pockets here and there, we see really great examples of programs like that are much more affordable for people with this background in order to help them get that university level English. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. And just to add to that final point, asking about pre-sessional support, there is a website called Displaced Students Opportunities UK, which is a partnership website between RE UK, STAR and the Universities of Sanctuary, which lists different opportunities available, including Sanctuary scholarships. But there is a section you can drop down and look at level of study and see pre-university and other levels, and you can find some of them available through that.